Well, Afzal Ashraf is an international security scholar at Loughborough University and also a former member of the UK Armed Forces, and he joins us here live in the studio. Afzal, welcome to the News Hour. I just want to get your take on your assessment of these possible talks in Islamabad.
Well, given the nature of the delegation going from the US, or supposed to be going from the US, that includes the vice president, according to the latest information, it suggests that the talks will probably go ahead. But whether the peace or the ceasefire continues is a different issue. Iran was very clear, and everybody else who's seen the 10-point plan is very clear that Lebanon was included. Now, it's not a surprise to me and all those people who've been watching this thing carefully that Israel is finding any loophole it can to scupper the talks.
And but the US is backing Israel up. We heard yesterday them say, Karen Levitt saying Lebanon was not in the ceasefire plan. So the US clearly backing the US on this.
I think it's more than
Israel
backing.
It's
more than backing. What's becoming increasingly clear is that Israel has hijacked US foreign and military policy. And that may sound a bit dramatic, but it's borne out by events. We have a statement a day after the war started from Secretary of State Rubio saying the Israelis were going to attack and we had to take part to protect our own capabilities, our own personnel. And we have a statement by the Secretary of War that we have objectives, Israel has their own objectives. And here we have a situation where the only person who is desperate for peace talks is President Trump, because he's experiencing the costs of the war, financial and otherwise, reputational. And the problem is that Israel is not experiencing those costs because it's politically insulated, it's financially insulated from this. But much more importantly, and this is the key point, when the war started, Prime Minister Netanyahu said he'd been waiting for this moment for 40 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if this stops
this is
now...
what he has been dreaming of, yeah.
Exactly. So if he stops now, he hasn't got 40 more years to wait. So I think he wants to do everything he can without being too obvious as far as the Americans are concerned, while giving the Americans some sort of rhetorical defense of his actions to scupper these talks.
And we keep hearing Iran saying that they will, possible reports, as our correspondent Reza said, that they may not even attend those talks in Islamabad, Iran, if Israel keeps attacking Lebanon. And right now, they're attacking Hezbollah sites in Lebanon as we speak. We've just heard that line in the last hour. So where does it leave the possibility of talks? Do you think that the US can exert its pressure, its influence, its leverage on Israel, and will Israel listen? Well, because we know that he can. We know Donald Trump can, but...
I think if the Iranians don't turn up saying we're consistent with our agreement, which is very likely, because you
say it's likely?
It's very likely. You see, the Iranians also don't want these peace talks unless they lead to a settlement, and they can't see that happening. And every time they've had negotiations with the US, they've been attacked. Every time they've come to an agreement,
the mistrust
been
right
taught
now,
up.
absolutely.
And so for them, it doesn't really advance. This is why they offered a maximalist agenda, things that they thought the Americans would never accept, that 10-point plan. But the Americans were so desperate, they've accepted them. And so I think they will look for an excuse to not turn up.
Iran will look for an excuse not to turn up,
yeah,
saying.
I think so, because what is in it for them? They can see that...
They already have the Strait of Hormuz.
They have the Strait of Hormuz. And
we just heard the Supreme Leader actually say that it's entering a new phase. It really does look like they have the control, the leverage now.
They have the control, but they also know that every day the pressure stops on the US and Israel, they can replenish the fast exhausting stocks of interceptor missiles. So if they're going to continue the pressure and have an impact, they need to do it. And if they stop, which they have done, they've stopped attacking the Gulf states for sure. I'm not sure about Israel, but they've certainly stopped attacking the Gulf states. They realize that they're going to go backwards because the West the Israelis and the US has a greater capacity to regenerate their capabilities than the Iranians.
Do you think that this could actually be a tactical pause then? What we're seeing right now, the talks in Islamabad?
I don't think, from the Americans' point of view, it's a tactical one. I think the president is desperate for the Straits of Hormuz to open up because of the economic costs to him and to the US.
Absolutely.
I think he's desperate, but he is not desperate enough to put the pressure on the Israelis. Maybe, you never know.
Why not? I mean, more than 300 people were killed yesterday by Israel in Lebanon. We've heard Donald Trump call this a skirmish.
Yeah.
That's another program, another debate, the language that's being used with regards to Lebanon. But the pressure to make Israel stop what it's doing in Lebanon right now from Donald Trump, do you see it?
Not from Donald Trump at the moment, but it could change tomorrow. And one of the things that is definitely noting is that the UK Foreign Secretary, the French and others have started to support without saying it, the Iranian position. They do feel that Israel should stop. And in fact, I think it's the French minister who said we should be considering EU sanctions against Israel. That's a very, very bold move forward. And I think there will come a point, it might happen very soon, it might take a bit longer, when the Americans will realize that they're paying a very heavy price for Israeli foreign policy, for Israeli ambitions in that region. Iran is the only country in the region that is standing up to Israeli ambitions for a greater Israel. There is no other country doing this. And you can see it from Israeli point of view why they must stop Iran. Otherwise, Iran will stop them.
I mean, they have been chanting death to Israel from their point of view.
Of course they have. And they will argue that they don't mean death to Israel as a state. They want death to die. But whatever there is, I'm not defending the Iranians by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm trying to say is that there is this political imperative for a greater Israel, which is now being talked about openly by senior members of the government and also the liberal opposition leader who's openly said after the war started, we should have a greater Israel. So from the two rivers, Nile, Euphrates, is now on the table. It was always described as being the idea of the crazies in Israel. Now the mainstream is backing it. So it's now much more of an open, much more of a naked, if you like, conflict, where each side has put its cards on the table. And so I think what will happen in the near future is exactly what you say. I think the Americans are going to start asking themselves those difficult questions you asked. Why not? Why can't we stop the Israelis? And the reason at the moment is individual politicians have felt the pressure of the Israeli lobby, but there comes a point at which their electorate becomes more important.
There comes a point. We will see when that point comes. Afzal, we will leave it there. Fascinating to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and giving us your time here on the News Hour. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.